Something I wanted to ask you, Shaun, is what was your kind of pivotal moment? Because you were at the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan for almost 10 years, yeah?
Yep.
And then you were at a company that got purchased by Coinbase. And like, was that the pivot, or was it something else more personal?
No, so I was at Ontario Teachers for about 10 years. I think I did the like almost like an internal fund of funds thing for a long time. So it's a great learning experience, but then I was kind of itchy for more direct portfolio management, like at the individual asset level. And also was very conscious of the fact that I didn't have much private markets exposure at that point. It was all kind of public assets, cross asset class global. So I took a job starting a group that was kind of like a go anywhere private focused team at a different pension plan. Around that same time, my engineering bug just kept biting me, which was like always a hobby computer science thing. And then crypto kind of took off.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, this is one of the most fundamentally impactful technologies I've ever seen. Like it's the missing piece of the internet effectively, because it creates property rights. It creates like you can own stuff that's digital, not Napster, which went the other way, which kind of showed us that like everything digital can be copied infinitely. Yes, but actually we need a way to represent true ownership on the internet, and that's roughly what a blockchain is. So that concept was very interesting to me, and my background in financial markets was why I thought it was interesting. It's like, okay, so we need to be able to own financial assets. It's going to be, real estate tokenized, great, sure. Everybody's been experimenting with that forever, but like, there's a very big world out there of who needs to know who owns what and how.
Mm.
And a lot of it has to do with trading and issuance and management of the life cycle of financial instruments. So I was very interested in that. And then within the context of these big Canadian pension plan kind of like, they're kind of like mega hedge fund-ish places, like multi-strats effectively. I kind of took over, okay, we should be investing in this technology, and then left because I wanted to focus on it. So that was the start of a hedge fund called One River Digital. Um, I was the first portfolio manager there. That got bought by Coinbase to become their asset manager. But part of the way along, I was like, look, that it's not just investing in these things, it's actually building the infrastructure that's really important here. And the advantage is to build the infrastructure with all the knowledge of how current financial markets work, not just kind of try to reinvent it from scratch, which is a little bit of the wrong end of the not scalable part of DeFi is like, hey, we're reinventing finance, but without any of the regulation. That's not going to scale. There's some great, brilliant kind of academic ideas baked in there, but like they need to integrate with broader capital markets to really find big scale. So yeah, I started running an engineering team inside that hedge fund to start doing smart contract engineering and building like infrastructure on the blockchain that would integrate with the regulated environment globally. And then that's now called tokenization. And what I do at Coinbase, my team got kind of moved out of the asset manager. So it's been a ride, but it's all connected. It's like touching global markets, investing in global markets, then wanting to build the infrastructure for the next generation of global markets, basically.
Yeah. So when you look at kind of like the wider crypto landscape, and it's been like a totally wild ride over the last, 5 to 10 years, do you feel that blockchain technology is like the number one thing that matters the most? Just because there's been a lot of stuff over the years with, different coins, and there's an ETF now for Bitcoin and Ethereum and all these different. It can feel very noisy, but do you think kind of at the core of all of this, the most important technology to really invest in and pay attention to is that like infrastructure behind the scenes, which is blockchain driven?
Um, no, not really. I think it's so foundational. Like if you think of our economic construct, it's all based on property rights. Without property rights, we don't have an economy. We don't have functional capitalism. We don't have anything. So when you say like, hey, we created property rights for the internet and it was missing before, that's kind of like, oh, we're rebooting like an economic system that can live on the internet.
Mm.
So I think there's layers that are important. I think people go back to Bitcoin because it's the demonstration of what's possible in its purest form. What if you had an asset that literally only has its property rights on the internet, in some cryptographically secure form? It's like, okay, that's incredibly important because it's now forced to. I had a conversation today about like, where are we from a dollarization perspective globally, and how much how much is de-dollarization real in trade flows, or is it more just something that kind of like hits the press because it's kind of a sexy topic? And it's like, without Bitcoin being a real thing, the concept of separating um, store of wealth and the unit of measure of economic transactions and means of payments, it was so bundled together for the last 50 or 100 years, kind of post World War II, that there wasn't this really interesting conversation around like, how are we going to start to think about those things in isolation and watch how the geopolitical situation, which is really flexible right now, is going to start to treat those things differently. Like, you've got central banks that have just gone through a massive gold acquisition phase. That was unfathomable 15 years ago when everybody wanted to talk about the US dollar as like the exorbitant privilege that would never die. So, I think that Bitcoin is incredibly valuable for that purpose. And it gave us a mental framework to explore a direction for capital markets that didn't really exist before it. Then I think you had Ethereum happen, which is like, what if this simple property rights layer was actually a fully programmable computer? What would you build with that computer? In fairness, it's a shitty computer for doing like computer things, but it's a really good computer for doing property rights things. And that's incredibly important. And then from that has grown the concept that, okay, if we have a full computer that can do this stuff, and smart contracts can grow in terms of their sophistication, and we can kind of abstract them into the background and turn it into infrastructure and get regulatory clarity around which ones are allowed to be used for what purposes. Then you kind of get into this like, let's start maturing the infrastructure. And I think that's the big phase of investment that we're headed into, is like, okay, what if this was a missing piece of the internet stack? What if the internet stack is now complete? We have property rights, we have communication, we have information storage and management. And now we have, exponentially accelerating computational intelligence that can just like apply to the whole thing and control the whole thing. So we have this programmable version of an economy now. I think blockchain infrastructure is critical for that, but it's like, it's one of the things you need to invest in. I really do think of it more as like a vertical stack that's coming together that will define the next generation of technology and like economic kind of relationships, more so than this is the one thing you need to invest in.
Right. Okay. No, that's good. That's a good description. So, of all the things that you're looking at and working on right now, what is the strongest signal for you? Like what feels like the most important thing happening right now?
I I hate to say that it's regulation because I really want
I
the
had a feeling you
technology,
would.
but I think it's regulation. I think the technology is mature enough that if it's given enough regulatory clarity for many more people to engage, that it will begin the next phase of building.
Mhm.
It's beginning, right? But it hasn't begun at scale because there are so many players that are not engaged yet because they're just not sure what they're allowed to do in terms of building product and like touching new customers and reforming the way their business operates to use this stuff as a core component. And I think once that starts to happen, there's so much investment in the technology itself because it becomes critical to these big, whether it's a bank or whatever. It's like, okay, what is if we're on generation 3 of blockchains today, if it's now critical infrastructure for the US banking system, like what does generation 6 looks like? Well, it's got way more features. It's matured tremendously. People from all walks of computer science and business have now like redesigned it for their own purposes. And so I think it's just this like massive accelerant. Um, so I don't know if I'm answering your question. What's the thing that gets me? Yeah, the thing holding it back is regulation because
Yeah.
that group will not engage. So it still remains a little bit like how much venture capital money is left for crypto infrastructure to continue to reinvent itself. And it's like, well, actually, we need everybody in the pool, and then
Mhm.
it's really going to go exponential.
Yeah, what is kind of the status of the regulation and the conversations that are happening? Does it feel no, I don't wanna say hopeless, but whenever I think about policy and DC and the SEC, it just feels like, is this just gonna be a battle for a very long time, or is there something that's kinda close to being pushed
I
through?
I am really impressed in my interactions with US and global regulators. And like I think I've learned a lot. I've been alongside with our policy team learning a lot about this over the last few years. I'm super impressed with how quickly policymakers that didn't come from this space have actually learned the fundamentals, and how sophisticated such a it's the wrong word. It's like how much nuance is now in the discussions and debates around the details that need to get right to be able to create consistent regulation. So that impresses me, but that's not the same thing as making new law and releasing new regulations quickly. And I think the challenge is there's almost nobody more powerful than the financial infrastructure incumbents globally. Like they sit next to the money. They are the core financial infrastructure for every business that runs. They make a good living and they have very little interest in seeing a ton of new competition come in
Right.
at a lower cost point.
Yeah.
And that is, again, when you combine what's happening in the AI space with what's possible with blockchains, if they're fully written into law, it's like competition is great for the consumer, but it really sucks for the incumbents. And this will unlock a very substantial wave of competition. So
Yeah.
you know, when I look at things like a post-Citizens United States and how much like direct capital can influence kind of like political decision making
Mhm.
around timeline, it just feels like there's a there's this scale of who's willing to kind of like create enough economic activity to own the problem,
Yeah.
and it's stuck in this tipping point because like nobody really wants it to change who's already making money on it, and
Yeah.
they're bad businesses. It's just they have a vested interest in status quo.
Yeah.
So I think that slows us down. I do think the smaller jurisdictions globally who are not just super high risk, but are actually trying to like make a name for themselves, are the most interesting places in the world right now. And there's a long list. It could be what Argentina is doing. It can be what the UAE is doing. It can be what Singapore's doing. It can be the way the Swiss are playing their European but not European kind of position to try and like experiment in novel ways. It's like there's a lot of experimentation going on in those places that have um, more direct, complete control over what they want to instantiate as regulations.
Right. Yeah.
And so I do think they're going to show the way, and the bigger, and even though we're motivated in the biggest markets to like lead, I think when it's something like this where your own incumbents are the ones that don't want you to change, it
Yeah.
becomes very hard to lead and you almost have to be forced to follow a little bit and then just show up in size. And
Yeah.
that's kind of my bet. So I would imagine like XYZ jurisdiction first, US quickly thereafter, once it feels like the US really needs to be involved and is moving too slow.
Yeah. It's a very realistic point of view to take. And that's, I mean, I'm not surprised that you said regulation. It does feel like that'll be the tipping point is when all these things kind of start. Because you're right, the technology is moving so fast. There's so much money behind so much of it. Everything is changing because of it. So it is a little frustrating though to kind of think about what's going to hold it back and how long it might take.
Yeah, and well, it's also worth calling out we're in an interesting moment right now where, this is about as, I don't know whether you want to call it oversold or fairly sold, but as sold as crypto has been in a long time as a
Right.
like it's very low on the sentiment scale. And at the same time, we see the incumbents globally in financial market infrastructure continuing to just steadily, linearly adopt this technology and try to create new products on top. So it's a funky mix. Like we've kind of lost the capital injection and we've lost a lot of the momentum, but the momentum exists in yeah, in the slower, more gradual uptake of, internet native finance. And it's just I think it's a period of high uncertainty. Like it could go in any number of directions from here.
Right. Right. How much of what you're working on would you categorize as like crypto versus AI, or is it one and the same to you these days with the work that you're doing? Because you and I have talked a lot of AI every
Yeah.
time I see you.
I see no difference. I think that we have watched the expansion of available intelligence over the last 3 years find its way into the way we do things, and that we're actually this year, kind of recently, like 3 months ago and through the next, let's say through the end of the year, we're now about to feel we're about to learn what it feels like to realize that human level intelligence is not really a natural stopping point for anything. It's just kind of an ego trade for us. It's like, oh, that's almost as good as a human. Oh, weird, that's better than a human. It never thought about a human as a relevant point to compare against. Um, so I don't see it as being separate from anything
Yeah.
because we've now just said, I need to get stuff done. What are my resources to do it?
Right.
And there's an entirely new category of resources. So if it's financial market infrastructure, if it's the creation of art, if it's how you process 100,000 documents, if it's the ways in which we're going to communicate and the ways in which we're going to learn, it's like there's new capabilities on the map. AI is a word that we use to describe it, but basically, like a smart computer is part of all of those things from here on.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, whenever I see, kind of sentiment around AI on like social media, you still see some people who are like, just turn it off, cut it off. I don't want it. People who are more focused on, I don't even know how to describe it exactly, but whenever I see that sentiment, I think like there's absolutely no way. There is no way any of this is backpedaling or it's too powerful. And I mean, I use it constantly. Like, I mean, it has definitely become that go-to resource. So you're right, it is absolutely touching everything.
Yeah, and I think the only real risk is how do we lose it? We lose it the way we lose all technology, which is we become economically dysfunctional. We go into a chaotic kind of geopolitical or societal time. And it's like, I don't know, people will talk about this in the current kind of, I'm very focused on the space industry just as a hobby, and by training. And it's like, um, why haven't we been back to the moon?
Mm,
Because like we just didn't care enough for a while to take step 2 and 3 and 4. We just got to step 1 and we're like, okay,
done.
victory achieved,
Yeah.
not worth spending the money on. So, could we see something like that? Could we see like a weird political and civil situation where there just is an inability to access enough token throughput? And I just think it's very unlikely because this is such a
Yeah.
global
Yeah.
thing and we're so connected. It's like if you slow down for a second, someone else is going to race ahead. So you just can't afford it.
Yeah. True.
Yeah.
That's when you end up with a twitchy eyelid.
Yeah. 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 Psychosis. I've been there.
Oh, it's so annoying. Okay, this next question, it's either people either have an answer right away or they struggle with it. So I'm always kind of curious to see how it goes. Is there a hill that you'll die on? And if so, what is it?
I I think, I mean, I'll take the crypto angle because I think that's what I'm supposed to be talking about. I think that that core principle, like this is the only way I've ever seen or can think of to establish credible property rights. Like you have to build a computer that makes it way more costly to attack something than it is to defend something.
Mm,
That's what blockchains are. They're just flipping the problem around. That's why they suck as computers, but they're like really good for that purpose, right? They're super defensible. And so it's like I would die on the hill that that is critical to what we need to build next, whether it's validating who's a human from who is an AI. Like that hasn't been blockchainified yet. Blockchain is the only solution to that. Some sort of collective ledger that we can establish and maintain as the truth is like super, super important and it needs to be defensible. So I think the hill I'd die on is not who owns it, how does it end up playing out, what exactly is the technology. Like all of those things I think are very path dependent and very difficult to predict. And you just have to be flexible and commercial and try to like create value. But if someone comes along and says, and people do say this, oh, we don't need that. Like we can just stitch together a network of trusted intermediaries and there. Like I think we're moving past that. And I don't think it's a credible argument that it's better to not have property rights on the internet than it is to have them.
have you read or watched or listened to something recently that kind of gave you pause? You're kind of still stewing a few days later, or something you're
Mm.
just excited to recommend to people?
No, I'm guilty of being in build only mode, not
Yeah.
consume mode right now, which is a different type of exhausting. So like I think people should go play with Claude Design.
Mm,
It got way better in the last couple of months, and I've, like,
yeah.
lost a lot of my, like, awake time to building stuff because I was like, "Wow, this is really effective." I don't think people are using it to its full extent,
Yeah.
and there'll be other versions of that, but I think that one's working really well right now, and it's like I think they did a June update, and I'm very impressed.
Man, there's an update. I have to restart Claude like every 30 minutes, it seems. I was excited about Fable, so I don't know what the deal is there. If it's even
Fable is
gonna, was that
these
for what,
things.
72 hours? Not even?
Yeah, the other ones that are be comparable, I think, are coming across the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
Um I think it's reasonable to assume we're headed into the 10 trillion model camp category now. Like we've actually just touched on that it's the first example of the next generation of models that are trained fundamentally at a different scale. And we'll go through 18 months of harness upgrades just to be able to really like bring them to their maximum potential. But I think that's just the first one. So I think you're going to see releases and then open source releases to follow that are going to be Fable level quality. And that's where we're going to see that in a bunch of categories, it just blows way past humans. I
Yeah.
think it's the best.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. That was my first thought when I saw Fable kind of unveiled. And again, it was very short-lived. But
Yeah.
yeah, design looks really interesting too. I need to play around with that. And again, we were talking about earlier, I'm not gonna watch a tutorial. I'm just gonna start,
Just to play with it.
just figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah. But you know what's really interesting? You asked me what book, movie, or thing I've read recently that I would recommend, and I couldn't come up with one, and then I recommended an AI tool to go play with. I think, like
That's very
I hadn't
telling.
thought about
Yeah.
it, but, like, that is my consumption now, and it's an
Yeah.
interactive consumption, and So that's an interesting sign.
I totally agree with you, and I feel similarly. I used to like I still like reading, and I still wanna pick up a book and, like, disconnect from the world, especially with, like, fiction. But no, there are definitely times where it's like, I'm gonna brainstorm through some things with Claude tonight." I think before,
Yeah,
after you turn off, work mode, you're still kind of in a version of it, but it feels like a hobby lately, just, like, hashing out things and brainstorming stuff. So I totally
yeah.
get that.
Yeah, I'd also recommend if anybody's still I made the switch away from OpenClaw to a Hermes agent, and I would have a bunch of kinda agents that I like to use, and, I find it more stable, and I find that I'm using it for more kind of casual, useful things because I'm not worried about how many times I'm gonna have to go fix it.
Yeah.
So, like, that's another recommendation is, like, hey, if you're stuck on, like, almost the way people give up on AI because they tried it 3 months ago and it didn't solve their problem, so they don't come back. It's like if
Yeah.
you're stuck on OpenClaw's too annoying to maintain, but I'd like to have a personal agent, and I have this Mac menu that I'm not using or whatever phase of that game you're in,
Yeah.
yeah, give the Hermes agent a try. It's really nice and stable.
It's so funny. I'm never ahead of the curve on stuff like this, but I've always had a Mac Mini. That's just
Yeah,
always been my home computer. So when I started hearing all this noise about it, I'm like, "Ah, yes, I can actually do that." So I've been testing out some agents recently as well, and again, it's none of it's perfect because I'm just kind of guessing. But when you see it start to work, it is incredible.
yeah. Yeah, it's just interactive. I think it's a really I think this label of harness is actually it's a little weird and technical, but it's, like, the right label. Like, the
Yeah.
stuff you wrap around the intelligence is just as important as the intelligence, and these agents are really a cool thing to wrap around it. It's very interactive, yeah.
So you said you're in build mode. Can you tell us about anything that you guys are working on, or should we just stay tuned?
Yeah, well, I think Brian, did the reveal, what was it, last week? So tokenized equities are definitely the focus for us right now to take that product from, like, coming soon to in market,
Mm,
and that's where 90% of my time is. I personally am also tinkering with a few things. One of them is how do you get context from people in using AI in an interactive mode? Like, how do you kind of interview someone effectively and quickly and get what you need to know into the system? So that's interesting to me, just on like a side project. And then, yeah, I've been tinkering with like what tools are available to make like explainer videos,
mm,
like that. I think there's a lot to be done there that isn't easy yet, where people can just be like, I wanna explain an idea," and, like, here's a really engaging, interactive way of doing that. Takes a ton of work right now to do that right. It's a full media production thing, you gotta have
totally.
I think that becomes, like, finger click, finger snap easy. Um, I don't know who's gonna figure out how to do it in the style that people want, and, like,
Yeah.
uh for it not quickly to become generic, I think is actually the hard part.
Yeah. I was
But,
just
like,
thinking the same thing because
I think
people
those
people
tools are getting better.
learn.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because people learn in different ways. Like, some people do want to sit and read something and, like, read a manual before they put their hands on anything. I'm the complete opposite
Yeah, me too.
versus people who like to just listen or talk through things. So, yeah, I could see how a project like that would need a lot of opportunities for, like, a customized learning
Mhm.
experience. But I
And to avoid and to insert taste, because like, I think this idea of AI smell is just gonna be more and more and more a
Yes.
thing. Like, your writing's got AI smell. Oh, your videos look too much like all the other videos, and it's like, how do we both use the tools that everybody has access to and make them our own,
Yeah.
but make it easy to do the stuff we wanna do? I think
Yeah.
that's, like, one of these big creative problems of the next 5 to 10 years, and so I spend a lot of time too much time tinkering with that sort of thing.
Yeah. So, what is something that you don't understand and you want to better? What's like I it's the version of this question, "What's your blind spot?" I asked Isabella Kaminska that, which is ironic because her letter is called The Blind Spot. And she made a really good point. She's like, "You don't blind spots are blind spots. You don't even know they're there." So really the question is what's the kind of hole you need to fill in?
I find myself often struggling with how to build things for customers that don't yet exist.
Mm,
And I think inherently, if you're going to try to push capabilities, you kind of live there.
yeah.
Um, but it's hard. It's hard because I kind of came from an investor and an engineering background and now live much more in a product management role, right? Like I'm
Mhm.
trying to like work that interface of delivery and then like effective running of a product against a group of people. But the audience for tokenized equities is still to be defined. It's still like small, kind of defined as a cloud of potential that we think is there, and then like really needs to work its way through multiple categories of customers, from retail purchasers to what does the institutional crowd eventually want on these rails. And so, like, that's obviously a very, my job at Coinbase kind of focused example,
Sure.
but it
Yeah.
but it exists everywhere. This idea of, like, this is where everybody celebrates, like, the Steve Jobs kind of archetype, where it's like, "I'm gonna tell you what you want because you don't even know yet."
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the way that most people do it. I think
No, no.
you have to try to do some combination of entice and guess, and
Yeah.
also be, like, responsible for building something that works in the direction that you're guessing and then adjust quickly, and I find that it's not I don't know if it's a particular blind spot for me, maybe only because there's a few people that you see and you think they do it extremely well, but I think it's kind of like I think it's a generic blind spot. It's like
Yeah.
uncertainty, but it's something I spend a lot of time thinking about and trying to get right and failing at and adjusting on. Yeah.
It's a complicated thing. I mean, I feel some of that with collective because part of the reason I started this was to make sure there was kind of a diverse blend of people because
Yeah.
if you're a day trader and you just meet up with day traders, more or less you're probably going to approach things the same way. But if you have a guy in the room that is the complete opposite, thinks about things differently, it just pushes the conversation. So when, I think about who am I designing this for? Who am I creating this for? The answers, there's 20 answers at any given time. So it's like this constantly, it's like a living thing. It morphs depending on who I'm thinking about and where the next thing is.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's like you can see each of the individual circles, but you're trying to guess at what the overlap of this giant Venn diagram looks like
Yeah.
because you've got to land
Yeah.
somewhere in the middle where it's, like, valuable to everybody you wanna have around.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really tricky.
Yeah. It's fun. It's a fun ride though. So all good.
Yeah.
Um, Robert, please jump in with any questions that you have. Oh, he unmuted.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, juggling a couple of different things, including a dishwasher breaking down on me. So trying to the glamorous life of a hedge fund manager. So, um, uh, look, Shaun, thank you for this. I'm the resident commodity guy and invest predominantly across the commodity and commodity equity realm. So I'm really interested in, you had mentioned sort of tokenization of equities. There's been some tokenization of commodities via some, gold-backed tokenizations and things like that. What do you think about the sort of physical commodity world as it morphs into some sort of derivative of crypto and blockchain, and
Yeah.
where that could lead us?
I think this is such an interesting question, and I would really admit to not being super savvy in the commodity space because it's so nuanced and different vertical by vertical. Um, Gold, silver, anything you can actually put in a vault and represent in a sort of traditional tokenized format, that feels like the easy part. And I think it's well suited to this, but then it's the other 99% of the commodities complex that I think is more of like a where I think it'll impact it is not all of these representations of commodities that have become more immediately tradable. I think it's more the underlying economic reality of how commodities are managed through their life cycle. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if in softs or, yeah, whatever, something that just has, like a natural cadence of expiry, if, like, stablecoin payment is much more important than the way that they're represented individually as investable assets. I think you'll have ETFs in tokenized format, and that'll be people trading futures curves and having kind of scaled businesses with trading desks alongside them that can manage those assets and kind of give you a delta one-ish representation of commodity price. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's faster payment and settlement and data that integrates with like commodities transportation and delivery and all that sort of stuff that actually is more impactful in the commodity space.
Totally makes sense. Thank you. This is sort of a different read and kind of probably outside the area of expertise, but interesting to me nonetheless. There's been a lot spoken about in the realm of the sort of precious metals and gold equity holders in terms of taking notice that one of the big uses of cash of the folks at Tether have been not to just invest in physical gold, but actually in gold equities, predominantly gold royalties. Is there anything you as a kind of crypto tokenization, et cetera, market insider, what's the reaction from within the kind of Bitcoin blockchain world to that in terms, is it a little odd, a little bit of a betrayal, a little bit of, how do you view it, if you can summarize both either your views or what you think the rest of the kind of crypto community is thinking?
Okay, so that's a very deep question in a lot of ways. I think of the ideology of crypto as something more generic. I've always used this example of like punk rock, you know? It's like it's really cool to be in that first wave of punk rock and like at the early Ramones shows. And then you get, you get a lot of cultural credibility for having been there. And then everybody talks about how early they got attached to the culture. And then eventually it grows up and some of the elements of that culture find its way, they bleed their way more broadly into society. And that's kind of like that culture's contribution. But then everybody's mad that the suits are there and you've got this like pop punk band and you got the guy in the
Exactly.
remote shirt that wants to talk about the good old days. And like every cultural, moment has this sort of cycle to it. And I think that it's a little different for something like Bitcoin because it's not constrained to, the late 70s in, like 4 states in the United States. It's like this giant internet available global thing that happened, that means very different things to different people in different places. Like if you were living in, Venezuela versus if you're living in the United States, like the ability to access this thing and what it may have done from an economic impact perspective could be totally different. You could think about it totally differently. So I get that that ideology is there and is important, and it's the only thing that commitment to the ideology is the only thing that will protect it in its early phase and get people and get increasing and attract an increasing and growing audience to it. So it feels like not only is it common, it's essential. I think as these things mature, you get the whinging is from the older guy in the Ramones t-shirt. It's like, how could you betray my Bitcoin to go buy gold? And while I think Bitcoin is an incredibly important asset because of what it's demonstrated is possible and because of the scale it operates at now, and I own it and want to own more and believe that it's actually a good part of a portfolio. Like I'm also Canadian and buying like gold miner stocks to get leverage on precious metals is like a very natural thing if you're trading on the TSX. So I don't think we should be so ideological about it. I think we should be more ideological about, and I'm biased, this is my hill to die on, about the technology being critically important to the evolution of the internet. I think that's totally true. But Bitcoin as an asset is a contribution to the portfolio of assets we have available to us with unique properties. And so it needs to be held in reasonable proportion. But guess what? If you see China and Russia loading up on gold, you're pretty sure that price is going up. You should probably be there too.
Right. Got it. I appreciate it. I know that's a very kind of broad reaching, and I'm asking you in some ways to speak for a a broader community that is every bit as differentiated within its spectrum as probably any other community. But I appreciate that a lot.
Shaun, you mentioned you're really interested in a lot of things happening with space. I know we only have a few minutes left, but I wanted to make sure to ask you about that. What are you excited about, and do you have your hands in anything? Uh,
Yeah. I advise a company for a few years now and have kind of been helping to guide them, called Space Markets. And it's one of a growing set of companies, I think, that are trying to figure out what will the orbital economy look like in 5 years or so. Now, this is all kind of pinch pointed with Starship becoming rapidly reusable. So we're kind of have this one horse race that in a lot of ways relies on Elon Musk and the theatrics that we're all experiencing. But um, that is a group of engineers that has excelled at rapidly advancing us to a place we thought was impossible. To have, I mean, the number of Falcon 9s and heavies that go up and down a year is like, it's like more than one a day. Like they're going up, they're coming down, they're getting reused. And now we have this much bigger, much cheaper way of delivering things to orbit that in the next couple of years is going to be the norm. Um, we will very quickly, I'm pretty confident, have a rapidly growing orbital economy. It'll include, data centers in space. We were talking about this a few years ago, but it sounded like a crazy idea. Now it sounds like a crazy idea that might become a practical idea. But even if that's not the thing that happens right away, like the need for compute, the need for storage, the need for delivery, the need for retrieval, the need for fueling, the need for all of the basics of just saying like it's way more effective for us to put all this stuff up in orbit and spin it around the Earth than to try to anchor it to the Earth. That's going to become possible, and very soon. And so I trained as a mediocre aerospace engineer, so I've always been interested in it.
wow.
And And I often say I knew like first week that I'm not the guy that should build your rocket. You should use that guy rocket. But like it's a really fascinating space, and I'm super excited that we're actually going to start to engage with it economically, not just as a government project, not just as a one-off, not just as a rallying cry, but like as a new frontier. I'm getting a little Star Trek here, but like a
Yeah,
new
it's
frontier
too
of the
late.
economy. It's like yeah, it's we got AI drones going deep ocean, and now we're gonna have a whole bunch of like actual private business.
Yeah,
Like the fact that there's more than one private space station company that have raised enough funds to be like, we fit inside of Starship, and the ISS is kind of crumbling, and people need space station space, so we're gonna go build it. Like if even one of them is successful, that's gonna be absolutely bananas.
yeah.
And I see all of that starting to happen in the next 2 to 5 years. So I'm really excited about that.
You'd be surprised how often Star Trek comes up in our conversations.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
it's kind of
I'm
remarkable. I need to like look back at my notes and just make a little document of all the instances where Star Trek made a point.
yeah. I like the super nerdy reference. What is it? Roddenberry, not Lucas. Like you want that version of the world, you know?
Oh, that's good. Um, is there someone in that kind of industry that you just described? By the way, I've never heard orbital economy. It's probably like a known term, but I love that. I feel like that's
I'm pressing it. I don't.
okay. If you're
I
coining it,
can't
I think
coin it,
it's
but I'm gonna push it. Yeah.
okay. All right. I'll contribute to that if I can. Is there someone that you'd be really excited to talk to that has something happening in that space that you haven't had a chance to? N- Even if it's not a person specifically, a description.
Yeah. So this is the part where I tell you you really need to get Elon on. Uh,
Oh
and
God.
if not, I think it would be amazing to talk to a collection of people that are focused on specific verticals in space and try to talk. This is again biased because this is what we're kind of working towards with space markets. It's like try to think about how they're going to interact with each other. So you've got this. You have to be an absolute zealot to be like, I've spent the last 10 years thinking about a private space station, right? So whoever that person is, there's a bunch of
Yeah.
them. That
Yeah.
person, like, okay, I want you to talk to the person who's going to control communication satellites because you're going to need them to be able to operate this space
Yeah.
station. You maybe think you're going to build it yourself, but I guarantee once there's enough stuff up there, you're going to rent, not buy, or you're going to rent or buy, not build. And
Right.
it's like the conversation between these folks, and there are, the conferences that are starting to happen that are like the coordination of capital and venture capital and what NASA wants to do and what other government organizations are interested in and how the military wants to interface with that. I think that concept is like one of the most under talked about things
Yeah.
around.
Interesting. Yeah. Almost like diplomats and I hate to say lobbyists, but I don't know. It seems like middlemen, like people that are kind of
Yeah, yeah, maybe, or even just like I guess I see it less from a policy perspective and more from like a commercial perspective. It's like
yeah.
where are we going to negotiate? Like, hey, I need satellite imagery. Like, where can I go to just buy this? I need it at this corner on this day, this many times an hour, and like, there's no real way right now to just go and say like, oh, I'll go buy that.
Yeah.
And I'll build a
Right.
business based on that, plus the ability to deliver it, plus the ability to like have a battery that's going to provide, XYZ, and I can get it up there relatively cheap. Like
Yeah.
I want people talking about how to create the business models that assemble these things.
Yeah. It's funny. I haven't figured out how to articulate this, but I think a lot about the things that I will like brainstorm with Claude. For example, I'm working with a strength expo event. They're looking for sponsors. So, of course, I'm going to brainstorm with Claude. What are some companies that would be really interested in something like this? There are people out there who are trying to market their brand and they're like, what are the best events happening that I could spend my marketing? I'm just like, AI knows all of these things. Like, I wish there was a way to tap into it, but then it just properly takes over the world. But
Yeah.
it feels like a point of friction for me because I'll literally be trying to figure something out. And I'm like, there's someone on the other side of this trying to figure out the same thing. And if we just could find each other. So I wonder about AI kind of starting to um, show up a little bit more in instances like that.
Yeah, I think you just described an AI dating service, but for a much
Kind of.
broader set of,
Yeah.
and it's like, I wonder what that will be like. That's definitely going to happen.
I think so too. I would put money on that if I
Yeah.
could.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how to bet on that one. Yeah.
Same. Well, thank you again, as
Thank you.
always,
Appreciate
for
it.
joining us, chatting with us. I've got some thoughts. I was making some notes, some ideas I have for some future conversations around the orbital economy, and a few other things that I'd love to keep in touch with you on, and hopefully we'll see you in person sometime this fall. If not at the annual event, maybe just another fun roundtable dinner in New York.
Sounds great. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Shaun. Well, good luck with all of the build. I know you've got your hands full. Hope it all goes well.
Yeah, appreciate it. Take care.
All right. Talk to you
Talk
soon.
soon.